Hello and welcome into another episode of BTN's Take 10 podcast. This is Alex Roux of BTN.com, and I think we're far enough into the show now. We're 10 plus episodes in that I don't need to number them at the beginning of each episode, especially with the volume of episodes I plan on rolling out in the next several weeks here as the football season approaches. It's just we're getting to have so many now that it'll just get tedious. So enough with the numbering. Just get right into the show. First, let me fill you in on what I was able to put together at this past week's Big Ten Media Days, because I'm pretty excited about the guests we were able to bring on board. As some of you may know by now, Fox will control a fairly large portion of the TV rights to Big Ten games starting this football season, and to sort of highlight this transition, Joel Klatt hosted the Big Ten kickoff luncheon on Tuesday, and Jenny Taft played a big role in the festivities as well. Joel and Jenny are both members of Fox's college football sort of A-team. They're the primetime crew, if you will. And Joel is the lead college football analyst and color commentator alongside Gus Johnson. And Jenny is the sideline reporter for that crew. And both were kind enough to come on the Take 10 podcast and join me at Media Days this past Monday and Tuesday. And I talked to them for this week's episode about a variety of personal and professional topics while working in a good amount of Big Ten talk as well. And beyond that, going forward, I'll have a bonus Media Days interview with former Notre Dame quarterback Brady Quinn coming next week, which I'm very excited for. And I plan on dropping a lot of stuff to go along with our BTN bus tour, which begins late next week and runs almost all the way up until football season, which will span the entire Big Ten and visit all 14 schools. So be sure to subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, Podbean, and rate and comment on the show. And when you subscribe, it makes it much easier to stay tuned. But for now, I'm going to start with my one-on-one sit-down with Fox's lead college football analyst, Joel Klatt. All right, I'm excited to be joined at Big Ten Media Days by former three-year starting quarterback at Colorado. He's the lead college football analyst for Fox Sports and the host of Tuesday's Big Ten Kickoff Luncheon at Media Days. It's Joel Klatt. Thanks for joining me, Joel. Welcome to Chicago.
It's good to be here. Can't wait. I'm excited. This is as excited as I've been for a season in a long time, not just because of the teams out there across the country, but the fact that, Fox is starting this new relationship with the Big Ten. So could not be more excited, and hopefully we get through this luncheon unscathed.
Sure. Yeah, you were a Big 12 guy in college at Colorado. You called a couple of Big Ten football championship games, but you still got to endear yourself to most of the conference, and this luncheon's a good chance to do that. So do you got anything lined up for the fans tomorrow?
For people, listen, when you're up there, people expect you to be entertaining and funny, and it's not really my forte either.
Sure.
I can talk about football. So I've written a few jokes. I've said them to some of my colleagues, and I have not gotten very good reactions. So I think I'm just going to fall all the way down to, if you just make a joke about the SEC, it's going to land well in a Big Ten room.
I think you'll be safe with an SEC joke. I think that'll go over pretty well.
There we go.
So you're
Is an Ole Miss joke too soon? No?
It might be a little too soon, but I think the fans here would appreciate it, get a kick out of it. Yeah. So you're at Fox now as the lead college football analyst. You got Gus Johnson by your side on the call. But, this isn't a case of a former football player, just dropping in the booth like we see, in the NFL maybe with Tony Romo, Jay Cutler. You literally started your broadcasting career calling high school games, right?
Yeah, I did. This was never a career that I thought was in the cards for me. I was an economics major at the University of Colorado, and if I fully thought, I was going to exhaust my playing opportunities, obviously, and then I was going to, in my mind, most likely coach, and if not, I was going to go into some sort of finance or banking. That's just the way that my mind worked. So once I got out of football, I started doing the banking route. I was an investment banker. I raised equity sections of private real estate deals, speculative real estate deals. And I was doing that, and Fox Sports Rocky Mountain, the regional network in the Denver area, had a high school package as a game, and the analyst, Alfred Williams, the former Bronco who was a Super Bowl champ, as well as a Colorado Buffalo, he got sick, and so they needed an analyst. And because I had just been the quarterback, they knew who I was, obviously. They heard I was in town, and they called me to do one game.
Yeah.
It was just to fill in.
And it was a high school game.
It was a high school football game. And when I got done, the executive producer, who was also directing the game, said, "Hey, I think you should do this more." And that's literally how it all started.
Sure.
And it just started growing. He gave me a few more games, and I started falling in love with it. And then I started doing everything. I started doing desk analyst work, and I had got a radio show, and I just kind of dove into broadcasting, and it's worked out. I could not imagine doing anything else with my life.
So you kind of worked your way up through the Fox tree from there. Where did you go after high school games in Colorado?
Well, I did arena football games.
Okay.
I have a minor league baseball background. I played for a few years before going back to school. So they put me on the Colorado Rockies desk as an analyst.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that was fun. And then I went down to Fox Sports Southwest to do the Big 12 studio show. And while I was there, they would give me a few games here and there. I remember calling a Kansas State Notre Dame game Nebraska game with Ndamukong Suh, if you remember those years.
Yeah.
And one of the executives at Big Fox saw some of the games that I was doing and started promoting me kind of through the ranks. So from Fox Sports Southwest, I was doing radio in Denver, and then all of a sudden Fox in LA asked me to be part of a bigger package, and then eventually they asked me to move to Los Angeles and be a part of FS1, and that's how it all happened. And then it's just kind of gone from there, and I've gotten some good breaks, and all of a sudden a couple of years ago they asked me to do the lead game, and that's always been my goal. So this genuinely is, I know this is cliche, my job is literally a dream come true. Because
Sure.
once I started in this industry, my goal was to be a lead analyst for a network.
The best.
And this is as good as it gets. And in particular, when we're on the precipice of a season, we're about to call football in what I think is the premier conference in the country.
Yeah. So taking the path you did, kind of climbing up the ladder, earning your stripes, what's your opinion of guys that are getting opportunities now? Like I mentioned, Jay Cutler, Tony Romo, they're right off the field just getting dropped in there. Do you think there's a big learning curve there for guys like that?
Certainly, there's going to be a huge learning curve. I personally think, if I had my choice, I would take my route, which was also a route that Kirk Herbstreit took,
right.
Which was lots of reps at lower levels to make mistakes, because you need to make mistakes. I am not envious of the guys that get their opportunity on a big stage, because it is very difficult. I believe that my job is 75% television, 25% football.
Okay.
And if you're just dropped in and have no basis of that 75%, that's a huge learning curve, huge. And I think those guys are going to struggle, but that should be expected. And so hopefully there's some leeway given in the public, even though I doubt that there will be.
It's just interesting because they're going to be struggling, like you said, in front of everybody, in front of the entire country. So it's going to be interesting to see.
But I do also want to say, Alex, if you don't mind, that doesn't mean that they didn't earn it.
Right.
Because their playing careers earned them this opportunity. I am not one of those guys who's like, oh, look, they just get this opportunity. Listen, they earned it.
Yeah.
If I was a better player, I would have started at a higher level in broadcasting. So I by no means begrudge them their opportunities. They've earned it. But I think it will be difficult, and they're going to have to really work hard in a quick fashion in order to integrate themselves into the television world and the entertainment world.
Yeah, and we use Cutler and Romo just because they're the most obvious and recent examples. There's plenty of guys that have, dropped in and done well, and some that haven't. I'm particularly interested in seeing how Cutler does because I'm a Bears fan, and he's been such a polarizing figure. But
it'd be interesting. I think Jay is going to have a little bit easier time than Tony Romo, because he's going to be with a couple of real veterans and great broadcasters, and Kevin Burkhardt and Charles Davis.
Sure.
That's going to allow Jay the opportunity to lean a little bit more on football early. He's not going to need to know as much television and mechanics and so on and so forth, because Charles is so good.
Right.
Charles Davis is one of the best, and he's a good friend, so that's going to help Jay a lot. And then another thing that will really help Jay, not that he would listen to this, I don't know, maybe he would.
Maybe.
Jay needs to be self-deprecating. Because of the way he is viewed in the public, you would categorize him as a bit of what's the word? Antagonist,
sure,
if you would.
I'd agree with that. And
so if he can be so, and you don't have to look any further than Alex Rodriguez, who embraced it, was then self-deprecated,
awesome.
And he's been great.
Right. He's totally changed the public.
Totally changed his image, and I think Jay has that opportunity at least to go in and if he can be humble and a little self-deprecating, I think people would really appreciate it.
I agree. Getting into your background a little bit more, you're not just a football guy, as you said. You played baseball. You've also done some golf coverage, right,
yeah.
for Fox. You're drafted, like you said, by the Padres, correct, before playing at Colorado. Did you actually prefer playing baseball over football, or was it football over baseball?
No, my first love has always been football. My dad was a high school football coach for 30 years, and that's my absolute first love. I was just a better baseball player.
Okay.
I was, in particular through the high school ranks, and so I had better opportunities. And then when the opportunity to get drafted came about, the fact that I would retain eligibility in football was certainly a factor in signing out of high school,
yeah.
rather than going to and playing baseball in college.
Yeah.
So it was never one or the other with that decision, but football has always been my first love. So, I just wish I was as good at football as I was at baseball.
So you went, after not making it in the minor leagues in baseball, you went to Colorado to play football. You were a walk-on at Colorado. So how does one become a walk-on, go from being a walk-on to a 3-year starter at a Big 12 school?
I think there was a lot of luck involved. There was a lot of hard work involved. And I think one was directly tied to the other. If I didn't have the opportunity to go and mature and learn about myself during minor league baseball, I would not have been the man that I was in college, in particular the worker that I was in college. I was much more of a self-starter and a leader once I got back to Colorado than I was playing minor league baseball. But yeah, I wasn't recruited at a high level playing football. Everyone, people thought like, oh, he must have been recruited by Colorado, so he just went back there. It actually happened in a very strange way. Colorado had just won the Big 12 championship in 2001, and I went up because the quarterback coach, offensive coordinator there, also recruited from the area that I played in high school. So I knew he was at least familiar with me, even though they didn't recruit me. And I had been to camp, just like the kids camp or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he had seen me play, at least at just a camp level. So I was familiar with him. So I went to meet with him, not to see if I could go there, but to get his advice about where to walk on elsewhere.
Sure.
I was asking him about places like Wyoming and northern Colorado and Hawaii, for like, hey, do you know any of the coaches at these places? Are they good to walk-ons? And as soon as he realized that I was serious about going back and playing football, he stopped me and said, hey, you're going to come here. I was shocked.
Yeah.
I by no means ever thought that I was going to have the ability to go to the University of Colorado. So to me, I was just going to be a part of the program. And then all of a sudden, I realized I was a decent player. And once I saw or caught a glimpse that there was an opportunity to play and that I could take that opportunity, I worked really hard to get it done, and in particular on the mental side and the schematic side, just to make sure that I could operate the offense to the best of my ability. But a lot of chance and luck, like I said, and it worked out.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by the stories of walk-ons, and then you'll see them. It usually doesn't get brought up until they're, have a major role in the team. And like, oh, that guy's a former walk-on, and I'm like, how in the heck did this guy, basically tried out for the team, made it, and then now as a starter and a successful player, I'm always fascinated by those stories. Getting back to your broadcasting a little bit, you're a national play-by-play guy, so you do games outside the Big Ten. With the Big Ten deal now in place with Fox, how do you brush up on all things Big Ten. Now you're not just doing one game.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're doing many. So how do you get a bigger, I guess, background knowledge of the conference?
Well, I think it helps that I've always viewed my role. See, I think college football is a much more global entity than even global in our opinions than even the NFL. And the reason I say that is because college football is still a subjective sport. There's some subjectivity into how we go about crowning our champion versus the National Football League.
Yeah.
In the NFL, you're going to qualify for the playoffs. It's set in stone how you do that and how you don't.
Right.
And then there's a playoff till the Super Bowl. So people's opinion about teams are just that, their opinions. It doesn't really matter. Whereas in college football, it matters what the sentiment is around your team, because that's ultimately where you're going to be ranked. And then that's how we put you into the playoff. So with that being said, even though our partnerships, our contracts have only been with the Pac-12 and the Big 12, I believe that if you're going to be an analyst on any game in college football, you have to be a national analyst. So I've always approached it that way. I do as much research, or did as much research on the Big Ten as I did on the Pac-12 in previous years, even though we weren't technically a partner. Not, only because you've got to be able to talk over the whole sport and do it in a quality way and an informed way. So it'll be no different. I'll do as much work on the ACC and the SEC as I do on the Big Ten this year, or the Pac-12 or the Big 12. And so because of that, it's not any different than last year. I'm not doing anything different. I'm not doing anything more or less than I've done in previous seasons.
How many games are you guys calling with the Big Ten this year?
Yeah, it just depends.
With how the schedule breaks out.
Right. I know that there's contractually, how many Fox does is contractually obligated.
Yep.
How many Gus and I will do, I have no idea.
Sure.
I have no idea.
Sure.
I know, listen, we'll be at Michigan, Ohio State. You know, that game is just one of those games that you're going to put the lead crew out there. So we'll do that game for sure. I wouldn't be surprised if we're at Michigan State for the Notre Dame game. I won't be surprised if we're in Columbus for the Penn State game.
Are you guys doing the Oklahoma-Ohio State game this year?
No, we don't have that selection. I think that was the number 2 pick. So with the first pick, we took Michigan, Ohio State.
Sure.
And the number 2 pick, I believe ABC, ESPN took Ohio State, Oklahoma.
Sure. What's it like calling a game with Gus Johnson, your partner? I'm not
great.
sure there's a more electric play-by-play guy in all the sports, really.
He is, because his energy is so good in the big moments, what I think is lost is how good he is even outside of those big moments.
Yeah.
He has the best timing that I've ever worked with. He has an incredible editorial mind as far as what is going to play well. He's a great storyteller, which I think people don't even realize he's doing in a game, but he's setting up characters and building characters during the course of the game, and it's almost novelesque, so that at the end, you're not just watching the end of a contest, you're watching characters play out this mythical contest.
Sure. And
sitting in the booth, it's pretty cool.
Right.
It's pretty cool to see. He's the best. I absolutely love working with Gus. It's been a pleasure getting to know him and become his friend. And I can't wait to move forward with some of the biggest games in college football.
It's your third season with Gus?
Third, yes.
Third? Okay. So week 1, you got a pretty hectic schedule.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? I saw on your Twitter you're going to Washington, Rutgers game, and then that's a Thursday?
That'll be a Friday
night.
Okay. So that'll be Fox's first Big Ten game that's under the umbrella of the New Deal.
Yep.
So we wanted to kick that off and do a big deal, and obviously Washington's likely to be in the top 5, if not the top 4 to start the season.
Tough challenge for Rutgers, for sure.
It'll be a very tough challenge for Rutgers. There's no question about it, because Washington's very good.
Yep.
So that'll be a Friday night, and then we'll jump on a plane and go back all the way to the West Coast. And Sunday night in prime time on the network, on Fox, we will have UCLA hosting Texas A&M in the All Coaches Hot Seat Bowl.
Right.
So we'll see Jim Mora and Kevin Sumlin battle it out there. Couldn't be more excited. I mean that one's very, very interesting, probably more so for the team that loses the game than the team that wins it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, fans will be pushing the panic button in those.
And anytime you get, I think it's so unique. I don't know if you think this as well. The SEC does not play outside of their footprint geographically.
Right.
They just don't. LSU has been willing to do it. Remember, they went to Syracuse and played up at Syracuse. Then they went to Lambeau and played Wisconsin. But we don't see that. I mean, you just don't see it. Yeah. I mean, Texas A&M in LA. That's. I think it's great for college football, regardless of where the two teams are going to be ranked. And I can't wait to see how that thing plays out, because anytime you get one of those SEC teams outside of their footprint, to be quite frank, that's an opportunity for those hosting conferences, not just for UCLA, but for the hosting conference, the Pac-12, to try to get a win, because anytime you beat the SEC in a non-conference game, it really boosts your conference. Yeah. And again, the subjective world of college football. So that's a huge game, and I can't wait for it.
So touching on that concept a little bit with the SEC not going outside of, or not scheduling tough games early in the season. I know you got into it a little bit with Colin Cowherd because he's been critical of Iowa, as Iowa fans know. And on his show, he was complimenting the San Francisco 49ers draft with C.J. Beathard and George Kittle, who actually was a guest on this show a few weeks back. And you got into it because he criticized Iowa for supposedly not scheduling. You
can't be
tough.
on the bandwagon now. All of a sudden, he's going to be praising the 49ers for Beathard and Kittle. He's been killing Iowa for, 2 years now? Right. So more than anything, I just wanted to call him to the mat.
That got you some praise within the Iowa circles, didn't it?
Oh, my goodness. Alex, you have no idea how much feedback I've gotten from that. People, all the Iowa papers hitting me up and radio shows.
Sure.
And I mean, people up there have taken it really serious. Like, I'm almost a little bit of a folk hero for them, for standing up to Colin Cowherd.
Carrying the flag for the Iowa Hawkeyes.
Carrying the flag for the Iowa Hawkeyes. But I think that in our sport, the subjectivity allows for myths to be perpetuated. Mm-hmm. And they just keep going. They keep going because there's nothing to stop it.
Yeah.
Right? Like in the NFL, there is playoff qualifications to stop myths.
Right.
In the case of college football, there's not. There's that subjectivity reigns. So things like that, whenever I get a chance to, what I believe, call out a falsehood, I kind of relish those opportunities.
Yeah. I think you'd be a good fit at Iowa anyway, because they always seem to have a walk-on that comes out of nowhere and then becomes a 3 or 4 year starter and is just tearing it up. So I think you'd be popular regardless among the Iowa Hawkeyes. So if you see any of their fans, I
have more familiarity with a program like Iowa than I do ever would Ohio State or Michigan. I would have never been recruited by an
even though they compare
Ohio
you to you're the Kirk Herbstreit of Fox,
Yeah.
So there you go.
There you go.
Didn't sound. Do you like that comparison? Or are you?
Well. He's just so good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy is synonymous with the sport, and rightly so. He's terrific at what he does. He's been great for the game, but at the same time, if I were to sit here and say well, I don't want to be like anybody.
You want to be your own guy.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely. And hopefully someday, I can get to the level where Gus and I are synonymous with the sport, and we can be as influential as what Kirk is right now. He's phenomenal. He's great. So it's not that I don't like the comparison as much as that's a lot.
To be honest, I think it's also an easy comparison. Just the blonde hair, the quarterback, and it's just it's
oh, man.
It's an easy comparison to make.
I'm younger.
All right. So
right.
Are you? I
am.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know Kirk Herbstreit's age, but I'll take your word for it. All right, wrapping up here, Joel. Just a couple more questions. Let me get your favorite on-field memory from your time at Colorado, if you have one.
Oh man, here we are trying to
boil down.
Well, we're trying to ingratiate me into the Big Ten, and now I'm about to lose a fan base here, because without question. The moment that I think I'll always remember from playing was in 2004. We went to Lincoln and we beat Nebraska in Memorial Stadium, and their fans were as good as any fans I've ever played in front of. They were
always polite.
They're always polite, but that locker room after that win, we had been through a really tumultuous season. Our coach, Gary Barnett, had been suspended the previous spring, and we had been investigated, and nothing was right, so everyone kept their jobs as they should have, and so we went through the season, and then winning that game on the road. Colorado had not won in Lincoln that often, and so to be our biggest rival and win that game, that was without question the best memory that I can remember.
How about your favorite broadcasting memory in the booth?
Oh man, there are so many. I think, to be honest, the thing I remember is that long, what was it, the 22 play drive from Michigan State 2 years ago in the Big Ten Championship,
right,
against Iowa.
Yeah.
That was incredible. It was an incredible drive. To hear Gus call the drive, to try to think along with the coordinators on each side, that was as fun as I've ever had, how much fun as I've ever had in the booth, that drive. And Michigan State was ultimately victorious, but either team deserved to win that game. It was an incredible game that then, the ending lived up to what the game had been up to that point.
Right, it was probably the lowest scoring Big Ten championship game, but you said at the end, it lived up to it.
Michigan State played. No, I guess that one wasn't very low scoring. Yeah, it was pretty.
It was 13 to something like that. Yeah.
I remember Beathard, early fourth quarter, he threw a bomb of a touchdown. It was like Michigan State climbed back, finally took the lead, and it was like 2 plays later, it was like, boom, Iowa takes the lead, and all of a sudden their fan base is smelling the playoff. Mm-hmm. And I just remember the euphoria, because we were right behind the Iowa fan. They were kind of on our side, that side where the booth is on. And so to see the euphoria, this dream is continuing, this is going to happen, because all year you got the feeling from their fan base, is this going to continue?
Right, they were knocking on the door of the top four, right. They were on the selection show, and
they win that game, they're going to go. Right. They're going to the playoff.
Right.
There's no question. And when Beathard hit that, I can't remember who caught the touchdown. But to see that, to see the crowd, I know what the television broadcast feels like, and that feels unbelievable. And then to see the emotion actually in the stadium, yeah, that was a really cool game. All
right, last question, Joel. Scrolling through your Twitter timeline, seem to like tweeting out GIFs or GIFs of usually TV shows to relate them to sports. So what's your go-to GIF in the holster?
You know what? I got to call myself out. I didn't even know how to do that until this summer.
Yeah. They put the little button in on the Twitter.
Someone on our social team at Fox showed me how. And so since then, I've done 8. And
maybe it was just recent, but I saw GIF.
Yeah, exactly. So a go-to. I think anytime I think you can put The Office, the show The Office.
There's so many.
So Michael Scott or any of those. There's so many good ones from The Office.
And everyone knows it, so it's always relatable.
Yes, exactly. So. And it's not too controversial and everything. That's always something. I know that the things I could post that would be the funniest, I really can't post.
Right.
But that's...
I feel you on that.
That's my maturity, I think, coming out. 5 years ago, I probably would have posted it.
All right, Joel. That's all I got for you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, you bet.
Have a great luncheon tomorrow.
Yeah.
Good luck. Don't screw up. And
I'm going to make a mistake. I know it. I can just feel it.
All right, well, we'll see you. We'll look for you on Fox this fall, calling Big Ten games.
You got
looking
it.
forward to it. Appreciate it. All right, thanks again to Joel Klatt, the crown prince of Iowa football, at least for now. And mark it down out there, he's definitely younger than Kirk Herbstreit, and so we were able to confirm that. And I also got to give a shout out to him because 30 seconds into our interview, my computer completely crashed and took the questions and the recording software down with it, and we had to wait for it to reboot, and Joel was not fazed at all and was super patient with me, so I appreciate that. And he also powered through some microphone issues at Tuesday's luncheon, which kind of messed up the opening joke. But he did manage to get a Hugh Freeze joke in there, an Ole Miss joke, like he said he was going to. So major props for that. That got a good laugh. And like he predicted, anything SEC related or any fun at the SEC's expense is very well received at Big Ten Media Days. But one thing to get straightened out, he needs to figure out why everything he touches is causing technical difficulties before the football season starts, because we can't have our main broadcast crashing down because Joel's got some sort of electromagnetic pulse coming from him or something like that that's causing everything to crash. So get that figured out, Joel, and we'll have a good season. Let's get on to my next guest, Jenny Taft, also of Fox Sports. Prior to arriving in Chicago this past week, Jenny had been running all over the country covering U.S. men's national soccer team for Fox. So we talk about that and talk about some of her other responsibilities in sports she's covered along the way. We talk about her dad's illustrious hockey career at Wisconsin and on to the Olympic hockey team and NHL, and a whole lot more with Jenny. So here we go. Let's get into it. It's Take 10's discussion with Jenny Taft. All right, I'm very pleased to be joined by Fox Sports reporter Jenny Taft. Jenny's a member of Fox's top college football crew alongside Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt. And with Fox's new Big Ten TV deal beginning this season, Jenny and her team will be covering a handful of Big Ten games. How's it going, Jenny?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. And you're in Chicago for Big Ten Media Days. And you've had a pretty hectic schedule covering soccer for Fox, right?
Yes, it has been busy. I have to switch gears for a couple days here. I've been with the U.S. men's national team throughout the Gold Cup, which has been really exciting. They made it to the final, and they just found out they'll be playing Jamaica. So that's Wednesday in Santa Clara, and I love covering the team. It's been a really fun ride, especially ahead of the World Cup next year.
So what's your schedule been like since your Fox soccer coverage has really heated up this summer?
Yeah, I think it's very unique where I have a busy summer full of soccer, and then August I really can switch gears thinking college football, and then in the winter I've had various assignments at Fox, from motocross racing to NASCAR stuff to basketball. So it definitely switches gears, but soccer has been a fun ride, and I really have enjoyed covering this team.
They're in pretty much a different city for every game, right? Mm-hmm. So you guys have crisscrossed the United States, and what other countries have you been in? Is the Gold Cup only in the United States, or is
Gold
it?
Cup is U.S.
Okay.
At the moment, this tournament, but we were just in Mexico City
right.
for a crucial World Cup qualifying match.
And they tied.
Yep. Which was pretty impressive. Michael Bradley had a nice goal there, and so that was a really great experience. Azteca is famous, the stadium itself, just the energy.
The fans can be pretty brutal on the United States players, right?
They can be brutal. They can be brutal on the sideline reporters too. They were warning me to wear a rain jacket.
Really? Because they might throw stuff on you?
Thrown. I was pretty good. I had a security guard, which he was awesome. People it's loud. They're yelling at you, but I think that's the best part about a sideline reporter, right? You get to be in these places and experience the energy and the atmosphere, and I think that's the same with Big Ten. Some of these venues are going to be unbelievable.
Right, 100,000 people, and
you
guys will be doing the big games, so it'll be fun. You've covered quite a bit of soccer for Fox with both men's and women's national teams, correct? Mm-hmm. Where is your favorite place you'd say that role has taken you covering those teams?
That's a really good question. Well, Mexico City, as I just mentioned, is a top spot for just a bucket list item. Just the entire Women's World Cup was throughout Canada, and they went all the way. So to be a part of that ride, we were in Vancouver, we were in Winnipeg, we were Montreal. It was unbelievable, and that was the whole experience was pretty special. And college football-wise, I'm not sure if I've had some pretty unbelievable games. At Colorado, Boulder last year were some pretty exciting games. I'm sure Joel talked to you about Boulder.
Yeah, you're just saying that because Joel just came out of this room, right?
Just came out. But I've had some pretty special games. So a lot to look forward to this year.
Sure thing. So take me back a little bit into your history as a sports journalist. How did you get started at Fox, and then how did that matriculate into your current role as the lead sideline reporter on the A team, as we'll call it?
Well, for me, growing up in Minnesota, I grew up in Edina, Minnesota, just suburb out of Minneapolis, and I played sports my whole life. So that was always the goal. And my dad was a hockey player, my mom was a speed skater, so ice hockey was definitely a big part of my life. And I learned early on that I wasn't maybe going to be playing professional sports for the rest of my life, and I just always wanted to play either hockey or lacrosse. That was what I ended up playing in college. And I just always wanted to be around the game. I think in this role, I'm still connected to it in so many ways, and I still get the same rush on a sideline as I did playing. And I think that's what's so cool about being a sideline reporter, that you're in the moment, but you're also kind of able to experience it the same way. So I always just played sports, and broadcast journalism was a really natural fit.
So what was your first, I guess, how did you break into Fox? And from there, I mean, everyone usually starts at a lower level. How did you work your way up?
I ended up graduating from Boston University with a broadcast journalism degree, and every summer I was home, I would intern at Fox Sports North. Mm-hmm. So I did various things for them as an intern, and they were hiring a Fox Sports girl program shortly after I graduated. And I'd been in New York working in PR, didn't like it, didn't really want to do PR, but I was a little naive in thinking I could get a job in TV in New York City right out of college, because why not?
Yeah.
So that really didn't work. But Fox Sports North was hiring, and they were very honest with me that if I did this job, they would give me chances on air. I did social media reporting. I did hosting from Twins games, in-arena hosting, and I just did a lot of different assignments for them and just worked my way up to I was the Lynx WNBA sideline reporter for them first. And then Gopher games, I did a lot of stuff. Just why not the girl that can skate, who knows hockey, like get her on the ice. I did a lot of Gopher interviews. And then FS1 was hiring, and I had an opportunity to go to Boston, to go to Nesson, and it just didn't feel right to do hockey. I really felt like FS1 would push me, and it could be a great experience, and it's been a great fit.
So you've covered a wide variety of sports at Fox during your time there. You mentioned hockey as well as soccer and football, and you also covered the Westminster Dog Show. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
That's got to be pretty unique and fun.
That was a special experience. Everyone at Fox was thrilled to have the Westminster Dog Show, and I think there's so much history to it. I have to tell you, I have never studied more in my life, because those dog names are very challenging. And what if the Petit Basson Griffon wins? Like, what are you going to do?
And there's so many different, kinds and breeds and all that. It's
many
unbelievable.
Breeds. It was a really special experience, and I love dogs. So being in that element, and Fox, I think, putting their sports twist on it, it was really special, and I'm really hopeful I could be involved again next year.
Is that probably the most unique sport, we can call it a sport, you've covered?
Gosh, I'd like to say that has to be the most unique. I'm trying to think of anything else that I've done that was really, well, I did cover this year a guy jumping out of a plane. It was called Heaven Sent. Without a parachute. So that was pretty special too. That was a extreme sport.
Yeah.
And that was special. That was on Fox earlier this year.
That's got to be kind of nerve-wracking, That's kind of a risky stunt.
It was very risky. He had practiced it 100 times with the parachute and just pulled it in the exact spot where he needed to land in the trap. So he was confident, so I was confident, but watching a man fall from the sky in that way, and I'm the sideline reporter, so I'm getting the interview either way.
Yeah.
It was pretty special.
So let's get back into your upbringing, your background a little bit more. You mentioned your dad was a hockey player at Wisconsin, and he wasn't just any hockey player. He was a very good hockey player. He was a captain on the U.S. national team, and then ended up playing in the NHL for, I think, six seasons is what it said in my research. So being from Wisconsin, or playing at Wisconsin, did he raise you as a Badgers fan growing up in Minnesota?
Yeah, I really was a Badger fan. I've got the Badger blood, as they say. It's unique because my mom and dad met at Wisconsin, and my grandfather was a vice president of the university. So my mom grew up in Madison. She then moved to River Falls when he became the chancellor at the University of Wisconsin River Falls, and she said to herself, when I can get back to Madison, I'm going immediately. So that's where my mom and dad met. And I was just talking to her earlier, and I said I was doing this, and she goes, well, make sure to bring up when Wisconsin beat Nebraska in 1974, and I was celebrating, and it was the best day, and I thought, that's what Wisconsin is.
Right.
Because it's that kind of fan base where, and that was a life-changing game, really, for the program, I think, if you look back. But she just said, you know, those are the memories that I have growing up, going to Camp Randall, mom and dad, just experiencing it. So I was 100% a Badger fan. I wanted to play hockey for Mark Johnson, who's just done an amazing job with the women's program, and my dad having played for Badger Bob. You know, I wanted that, and I wasn't quite good enough to play there, and so it wasn't a good fit, but I've always just loved everything that Badger, you know, the entire atmosphere of Wisconsin is really special.
So if you weren't going to be an athlete in college, do you think you would have ended up at Wisconsin, or was it always really?
100%. All my cousins have been there. I said I played lacrosse at BU, which was a great fit, but they didn't have a lacrosse program at Wisconsin.
Right.
So I think that maybe that would have changed things for me. But just, I think being from Minnesota, I support the Gophers in a way that I want them to do well.
Yeah.
I think having Fleck is going to be a big thing for the program,
sure.
and I'm very excited to get to know him and just learn more about I love his story and what he's done in his past. So I think that's exciting, and I have so many friends who are Gophers. So
sure.
I want to see them do well, but if you had to tell me what to decide, I think I'd say Badgers all the way.
It's a tricky tightrope to walk, because I know it's a pretty big rivalry for some people. Some people, like yourself, grow up in Minnesota, and they can get tuition at a pretty good rate over in Wisconsin and vice versa. So it's there's a lot of crossover there, I feel like. So
a lot of crossover.
So yeah, you grew up. You were a pretty good lacrosse player in Minnesota, and were you a walk-on at Boston?
Yeah, so I walked on at BU. Kind of similar situation where I knew I wanted to study broadcast journalism, and BU had a great program, and the coach was, being from Minnesota, we're not known for lacrosse, and so I wasn't quite there compared to some of the players, and my coach was really awesome. She said, you know, come spend the fall with us, improve, and let's see at the end of the fall ball, and I ended up, you know, earning a scholarship when I was there. So it was a really cool experience to be a walk-on, and that's what I love about Joel Klatt and I, both walk-on.
Right, yeah, this is the walk-on podcast
right now.
Yeah, the
walk-on podcast, and it just, I think that there's something to say about, and so many of these guys too that are a part of media days that have been walk-ons that have made something.
That's what I was saying to Joel, that, you know, there's plenty of players in the Big Ten you hear about that are stars, and they start out as a walk-on, just like Joel and yourself, and it's kind of unbelievable that I was telling Joel that, you know, you can basically just end up there by chance or by a tryout, and then end up being such a crucial part of a team.
Yeah.
And Boston wasn't just any lacrosse program. You guys were legit, right?
We were pretty good.
Yeah.
We made it to playoffs every year. It was just an unbelievable group of women and friends that I still have, and a coach that obviously gave me a shot, which meant a lot. But I think for me, it was just being a part of a team, and that, I think, is what's made me a good sideline reporter, I'd like to think. Because I think in you playing sports in college, you understand what goes into it. I by no means understand what these guys do, but you know the schedule and the routine and how challenging it is. And that's why I love getting to know these athletes, because there's so much that goes into this. And I just love learning the stories.
Absolutely. And you mentioned your broadcast journalism degree at Boston, and you started out in PR, and I feel like when I was in school, I wasn't a journalism major, but I did take some PR classes, and they would always say, like, oh, once you cross that line, you know, you'll never go back. Was that something that anyone ever said to you when you started in PR, where they're like, oh, well, now you can never work in the media? Was that ever something that was...
That's a good point. It was a pretty short stint. I mentioned it briefly, but like I really wanted to be in New York because my boyfriend, well, my now husband at the time, but he was in New York, so I thought, why not? We'll be in New York and it'll be fun, and I'll find a job. And I didn't want to do PR, and I was only in it for 6 months, but it did give me a perspective of the other side of it.
Sure.
And I think it's daunting a little bit to be in broadcast, and you realize that you have to start really at the bottom and work your way up.
Sure.
So I think I was maybe a little nervous to take that step, but going home and going back to Fox Sports North was the best thing that ever happened to me. So, you know, it was good that I did PR for a bit to realize I didn't want that to be my job.
And your career is taken off from there. So we're gonna fast forward a little bit now to the current day, your current role with Fox and the exciting Big Ten football season coming up. How have you prepared for the season and kind of brushed up on your Big Ten football knowledge, especially being on the road so much and having these other responsibilities, especially with soccer? You're never in one place.
Yeah, I think right now that this soccer wraps up Wednesday with the final, but you stay up to date. You do all your research, right? You're always reading about everything, and I love college football in that the storylines are already kind of there. There's still so much time has passed since last season, but guys have healed up, right?